Okay, welcome to your first theory lesson. So I've just got a couple of books here that I recommend getting hold of. The first one here is Music Theory for Dummies. Sounds kind of lame, the whole for dummies thing. You might be, well, actually I know a little bit about this stuff. I was kind of like that when I was buying this book, but the truth is I went all over town trying to find a book that just covered theory in general really well, and this was the best one I could find. I spent a lot of time searching, and this is what it came down to. It just explains everything really well. It stays away from the sort of the stagnant, old school sort of mindsets and that sort of thing that tend to make things more complicated. So yeah, great book to get hold of. If you're on our website, there's a link at the top of the page where you can track down one of these, so you don't have to search through all the stores like I did. The other thing we're going to look at is theory grade books. They're not going to be the same as this one. This is quite an old one. This is just the one I have on hand at the moment. So we're going to be covering the grades as we go, just to make sure that you're getting everything you need. So if you want to do grades, you can go through and do grade exams. If you're at school or something like that, talk to your music teacher about that. Yeah, otherwise if you're doing lessons, they might know somebody local where you can sit the exams and that sort of thing. But I'm just going to make sure that we're going to cover this, because if we cover the grades all the way up, then we know that we're getting the whole picture of theory. So if you're doing an instrument, or even if you're singing, I encourage you to do these theory lessons as well. Working in music and not knowing theory is kind of like being in a workplace with somebody who speaks a different language. You might sort of get across what you're trying to say, but it's going to take a lot longer than if you understand theory and you can speak the language. Basically, that's what we're talking about. Theory is really the language of music. So we're going to start at the beginning. Okay, so the thing we're going to start with now is note values. Okay, so we're not talking about pitch at this stage, the A, B, C, D sort of thing. We're talking about their time value. Okay, of course we're going to cover pitch and everything as well, but this is just to start us off. So we're going to be just looking at the basic values of notes. So we'll start at the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to give you both sets of names. So there's an American name and a British name, different schools of theory. It's kind of important that we know both. I kind of like the American ones because they explain what the note is, rather than just giving it a fancy name. But yeah, it is important actually to know both of them, so we're going to learn both. Cool, so we'll start with what's called a whole note. Just going to move this down so you can see the board better than you can see me. And it's kind of an elliptical shape. Generally has those ends coloured in a little bit. And that is a whole note. Kind of hard to write over there, sorry, wonky N. Okay, in British terms, semi-breve. Cool. Okay, so I like to think of that one as a whole pie. Just as a way to remember it, that's the whole pie right there. So if we're in 4/4 timing, which is our most common time signature, that's going to take a whole bar. It's going to be worth a count of 4 beats, okay, in 4/4 timing, but we'll get into time signatures and things later. So then what we do, we're going to split that in half. And actually, I'm going to want to come out further. And then we're going to have this note. Okay, so this note is kind of like the pie that's been cut in half. Okay, and that makes it a half note. Cool, being half of a whole note. Cool, it's kind of like maths, because music theory was actually invented by a mathematician that decided to say, hey, there needs to be a way that we need to communicate this stuff. So he basically invented what we know as music theory. Cool, and that is called a minim also. Alright, and then we split it again, and we end up with this one, which is a quarter note. Kind of like we cut the pie again, but now we can see mostly mince now, so it's gone black. It's a long reach over there. Cool, quarter note. So in 4/4 timing that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice and simple. Okay, and that is called a crotchet. Okay, and then we're going to split it again. So it's going to look kind of the same, but then it's going to have this wavy little tail on it. Kind of like we're adding another cut, even if it is a wonky cut. And they get wonkier and wonkier the further away I go. Depending how they're written, it might just go like that. Depending if someone's just, writing them quickly like you generally would here, but if they're printed properly, they'll have a little fancy little wavy tail on them. Okay, that is called a quaver. Okay, and then we keep going, and that is an 8th note. And then we're going to keep going, and we're just going to do that again. Now it's going to have 2 tails. So each time we go, we're just splitting them in half. So their value is half the time of the one above. Okay, and that one is called a semiquaver, or a 16th note. And so on and so forth. They're all the same across there. I'm not going to keep drawing them all. Okay, so generally in grade 1 theory, that's about as far as you go. Okay, you just learn about those ones. Those are the basic ones. They're the ones you're going to see most of the time. Okay, we're just going to push it a little bit further because there are actually some more. Okay, so if we split that again, then we end up with one that has 3 tails. And so on and so forth. Kind of gone wonky over there, running out of room. Okay, so that one, I'm just going to reposition myself, is a semi quaver. Okay, and that is a 32nd note. Okay, so each time, just like fractions, each time you come down, because you're splitting them in half, this number at the bottom just doubles. Okay, and then if we want to get really, really crazy, it does actually go again. Okay, I'll come from this one here, so I've got enough room to write the word. So we split that in half, and we end up with 4 tails, which would generally be drawn better than I'm drawing them. Cool. And that one is a 64th note, or a hemi, demi, semi quaver. Alright, you do see them sometimes. They're not as common because it's getting quite fast. Okay, so any of these notes here with tails we can tie together. So what I can do, these two quavers here can be drawn like that, just joined together. Okay, same with these here. Except they'll have 2 bars. Okay, and same with these ones here, except they will have 3 bars. And same with these two here, except they will have 4 bars. Okay, so being joined together like that doesn't change what they mean, it just makes it easier to look at. So if we had a whole bunch of these that were just going right through a bar, with their 2 tails, and we drew them all like that, okay, it would be a lot of individual things to look at. What we can do is we can just go and join the whole lot together because they're all the same note with a couple of bars. Okay, and you know that for that period they're all semiquavers, okay, or 16th notes. Alright, so that's the first part of knowing note values. Okay, so our second part now of knowing note values is a little bit of an addition to them that we can make, which is dot. Okay, so if a note has a dot after it, what it does is it adds half of its value again, which means that now has this value added to it, because this note is half of that. Okay, so now instead of being a half note, it's a 3/4 note because it's had a quarter added to it. Okay, it might sound a little bit complicated at this stage, but we'll talk about that more as we carry on with rhythms and that sort of thing. But just know for now, if you see a dot after the note, it means you're adding half of its own value to it again. Okay, so that can come up after any of these notes. So that one would have a quaver added to it. Okay, so that is the basic look at note values, and that's your first theory lesson. So I encourage you to draw this down. Maybe get yourself a book that you can keep as like your theory book, so that you can come back to this at a later stage. Draw this picture down. If you want to be nice and fancy, then you can draw all the individual things. Just make sure you have enough space on the page. Make it all look nice and neat, but it's a good reference to be able to come back to. So yeah, if you get hold of like the theory books and that sort of thing, they'll have these pictures in them. They just, like I say, they don't generally add the 32nd note and 64th note at the initial stages, just because they're a bit more complicated. But it makes sense to me just to cover all of that all in one go. Awesome, well done.